Hey everybody, this is Julinna Oxley with Grand Strand Action Together, and we are here tonight, Tuesday, April 13th, to talk with our panelists about voter participation and increasing electoral turnout. We're real excited to have our panelists with us, so I'm going to turn things to Ashlyn at this moment. All right.
All right, now that we have a little problem over with. So we brought two of my favorite people on that I've worked with in the past. We have Deidre Griffin and we have Micah Brendale Jenkins. They both have worked on numerous campaigns, most recently with me on the Bernie Sanders primary campaign. And both of you worked on Jamie Harrison's. Right? Okay. And Micah most recently ran for county council. Is it Anderson County? And Deidre is a mom of a lovely preteen. And they here are in South Carolina and they're organizing in their communities. And these are the folks that I think that we should be talking to. So that is basically my intro for them. I'll try not to embarrass Deidre too much because she'll
Thank you. That's okay.
Micah, I think, had like the most tough organizing area for the primary campaign. So it's going to be very, very insightful to learn from him.
Yeah, good. All right, that sounds good. So I know it's so interesting that we just wrapped up an election, but it is not too early to start thinking already about the future, about the midterms that are going to be coming up in like a year from now. So we're already thinking about that, and we're already thinking and knowing that organizations are going to start trying to reach out to voters here in South Carolina to get them mobilized. What would you like to see happen in regards to, for example, rural communities who have a typically low voter turnout historically in those communities? And if you could just, either one of you, we can take turns with y'all and just to talk about your experience organizing, and especially in rural areas. So I don't know who wants to go first.
We'll do Micah.
Okay, awesome. I guess what I would like to see different is maybe more attention to those areas, to our rural counties like McCormick or Allendale and stuff like that. Because I think there's so much potential in there, so much we can like flip and turn, you know? So I think more attention to it, and then also finding out the needs, like really listening to like the needs of people in rural communities. Whether it's like internet access or water, you know, there's just different things. And it's just understanding what that particular area need and then outreaching to them. I feel like that would turn out voter turnout.
What do you see instead happening? Or what have you seen maybe, let's see, like the past 5 years? I know, you know, COVID's kind of made things tricky for the past year, but even before that, like the 2016 election, the 2018 midterms, what do you typically see from either, you know, campaigns, candidates themselves, parties, or even the organizations who may or may not be nonpartisan, but what kind of outreach do you see that you think isn't really working?
Oh, okay. I was gonna say this for the second question.
It's more of like a free flowing.
Yeah.
So just spitball.
For me, so I think being involved in like different organizations, like learning about like Fair Fight and stuff. I honestly think as a Democrat, we should kind of do a different version of Vote Builder. I don't feel like it gives us enough details. I don't feel like it helps us enough. It helps, but not as effective as it could be. Like we could find different ways to target. We can learn how to message differently in different counties, if that makes sense.
Right.
By going through a different process.
And just so people know, Vote Builder, if someone's watching and they don't know what Vote Builder is, what would you say?
Sorry, I'm so used to the organizer.
Ones or twos, people will not know.
Right. So for those who don't know what Vote Builder is, it's a system that we use to reach our voters, our constituents. So it helps us with our calling, or when you see people knocking your doors and you wondering like, oh, how did they find out about me? It's through our system with Vote Builder. It's like we go to the people who vote the most, but it only tells us a little bit about you. Really, it only tells us your name and hopefully your number if it still works. You know what I mean? Doesn't change. So it doesn't give us that much to work with. So you're basically starting from scratch and trying to build up.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that's why we see that by the next election, all that stuff may be different, especially, with apartments and different phone numbers. So I feel you on that. That's definitely not the best way to do things. Julinna, how many times do people come to your house and they are looking for the wrong person?
Zero. I got zero knocks on doors, but I got a million flyers. So
Okay.
I got flyers for, pretty much every candidate, pretty much all the Democratic candidates that were running for president, for sure, back when there was like a million people running. So I don't know, maybe that's just because my registration, but yeah, in my area, I don't, and our area is kind of weird because we have a lot of these subdivisions, and most subdivisions, they might have rules about not going door to door, even though, and this is one of the tricky things that I know Ashlyn was frustrated with, is that in these communities, people are like, oh, you're not allowed to go door to door. And it's like, well, for selling stuff, yeah, but for canvassing for political stuff, you are allowed. And yet I think people in the area are not always familiar with that difference, and they might run people off.
Yeah, we've all had our encounters. Deidre, what about you? What is your thinking on Julinna's question about what you want to see different in Florence and even the counties that you worked for the primary?
I guess I'm going to copy Micah. I want to see people, when you actually do campaign and you do canvas, actually listen to the people that you're talking to. Don't let it be just a one-sided conversation. Also, I really think we need to do more voter education. And in the interim, we need to do more voter engagement things. And instead of just having like the regular events, the typical events that we have, like panel discussions, make it more fun, make it more interactive, and things that people would want to come to and participate in.
Yeah.
I want to say real quick, I agree with you on the voter education. I was talking to a small business owner, and he grew up, in and out of jail, rough upbringing and stuff like that. So it was really interesting in our conversation. He was telling me, there's people out here who say they'll vote for you and might really want to, but honestly don't know how to vote, don't know what a voter registration looks like, don't know if they even register or where to go. You know what I mean? So it is like that education that needs to be going on. Like we're having a runoff for the county council seat. And I just went to go vote, and I was the 53rd person, and I got there at 5 o'clock. You get what I'm saying? Like, so turnout is very low. And we need to be educated on it. Yeah.
So I'm just real curious about, one of the things that you picked up, Micah, and that you kind of mentioned, Deidre. So Micah, you mentioned that people like don't have running water, like in some of these rural areas. Is that something that you just mentioned as like as a campaign issue, that like you might want better like facilities or like just basic infrastructure in South Carolina? Is that kind of what we're looking at?
I think so. I didn't mean to say they didn't have running water.
Okay.
I just kind of meant to say like, yeah, sometimes it's not the best, or sometimes it's dirty. But honestly, knocking on doors, and then before that, like in between the general election, we have to pick up that part-time job and stuff like that. I delivered pizza for a little bit, and when I knocked on doors, I went to people's houses. Some people were living in sheds, in the back of someone else's yard. This is like a shed, and you're living there with your son or whatever, and it makes you think like, well, it makes you think about other people's conditions and what they're going through. I was going to go on a tangent. I had to catch myself, but
do not back.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's such an important thing, because I mean, voter turnout, at least, and again, I hate to look at things from an academic perspective, but just in terms of the numbers, wealthier people and more highly educated people vote. That's probably because they have access, they have cars, they understand the process, right? They know how to get registered, and the things that you're describing are basic, like, tools that if people are not, if they haven't finished the 9th grade, then they're not going to know where to go vote, right? And so that's why, but they still deserve the same right to vote, and need to have the access and ability to vote. So I can see why canvassing in a lot of these areas is like the education piece is really important.
Mhm.
And it matters.
A lot of people too, they don't know why it's important to vote in your local elections.
Yeah.
Why it's really more important to vote in local elections versus the presidential.
Right.
And a lot of people, they just don't know what the local government is supposed to be doing for them.
Mhm.
So yeah, voter education is really needed. And then also you have people who are disenfranchised because they did vote. And you have these, phony people who, they run on a platform of saying they want to help people, but it's really just for clout. And so you have these people that become emotionally invested and they vote for these people, and then they get in office and they forget about them. And they don't do anything to help the communities.
Until they need reelected.
Right.
But they come out with like fish and voter registration forms and have a little barbecue.
Right.
They don't see you for the rest of the 2 years.
Right. They have block parties for these communities, but they've done nothing to help these communities. They've robbed them.
Right. That's what I was about to say, to the point of Micah saying that he was the 53rd person to vote in his county council runoff. That's something like people don't know about special elections. They sure as hell don't come out for runoff elections. How do you change that when you have some of the folks who need to be voting to change things for their neighbors and themselves? Like maybe they don't have the internet, or they don't even have time between working 3 jobs. They don't have a car to get to the voter registration office, or they don't have an ID, and we need voter IDs to go vote. So I guess it's just like a very big problem, but I feel like no one's really taking steps overall to solve it.
No, well, I mean, it's a systemic issue, and we all know, I probably shouldn't say it, but South Carolina doesn't really want everyone voting. So, I mean, the system is technically working as it is supposed to work.
Right.
I had to say, but yeah, you're not wrong. If we really cared about wanting people to vote, we would automatically enroll them as voters when they turn 18, right? You could have automatic registration. Just like the way you get your driver's license, and it can default to like being an organ donor, right? Instead of having to check the box to decide to be an organ donor. I mean, there's lots of countries where it's just like you're mandatory, you're automatically enrolled in the system. So it's definitely not hard to do. We just don't have a lot of political will to do it. So
right. And so while there's candidates, campaigns, political parties, and nonprofit organizations or other voting groups who maybe have good intentions with what they're doing, it's just not working well. What would you say is an actual mistake that you've seen in the past 5 or so years that we can't repeat if we want anything to change here in South Carolina?
Well, being judgmental about people who don't vote. And then when you go and talk to them, instead of having a conversation and, just basically respecting them as a human being and listening, if you can actually take something from the interaction. I've seen a lot of people just go and preach at people, and they walk in these neighborhoods like, I know what's best for you. I'm going to save you. Listen to me. What I have to say. I don't care about what's going on in your neighborhood. I think you're simple. for not voting, and how could you not know who's running, and how could you not know about the political process? Like, I've seen a lot of arrogant, pompous people who are actually doing more damage.
Right.
Mhm. I agree. I really agree. I think it's important to listen to when you a candidate, or if you're like someone who's working for a candidate, and you're knocking on these doors, it's important to listen to their concerns and what's going on, and even suggestions. There was a lady who door I knocked on, and she talked to us for a while about the homeless crisis, and she provided suggestions and stuff like that, which was really good suggestions and everything. But you wouldn't have known that if you didn't ask the questions. You know what I mean? If you didn't take those time to actually listen to them. I think a mistake too is this party's not voter turnout, but it's more about, like, I guess, developing our younger leaders. Is that, like, we get people in office and they stay in there for a while and they don't do the work of developing more people, or reaching out to people in the community who might have like a messed up background, but now on the straight path. You know, that's someone to reach out to. That's a leader. In rural communities, you need those people who are like leaders and influentials to like get the word out, you know?
Yeah. I think that goes to the point with Deidre saying that folks come in there and they think they know better than the people who live there. These people don't see you again. You know, you knock on their door and then what? There's no follow-up. They're not sold on your candidate. You don't talk to them again. So I think that's probably part of it. And I guess how do we, and this is probably rhetorical because obviously none of the four of us can fix this, but how do we get people with power to kind of like not turn off the campaigning and to be more invested in what is going on even after you secure their vote? You know, what are some things that you maybe have witnessed in the communities that you were working for the campaigns that you've been on in the past that you think like we should pay attention to this?
Well, I've actually seen, and let me censor myself so my mouth doesn't get me in trouble. I have seen so-called activists and people in power, for lack of a better phrase, physically turn their backs on someone because they didn't, you know, they didn't have the right aesthetic. The guy, you know, he came shirtless and had, you know, gold teeth, and he wasn't polished like, you know, certain people, you know, want people to look, and they like physically looked at him and turned their backs and didn't talk to him. And I'm like, but I mean, I talked to him, but this is someone who we need to talk to.
Yeah.
You know, to find out, hey, did you vote yet? Are you going to vote? You want to take your friends to the polls? Like, do you know why you should vote? But instead of reaching out to people who aren't in a specific class, that they, you know, that they kind of cater to, instead of reaching them, they just turn their backs.
Right.
And that's a huge problem that we don't talk about.
Let me just say, knowing that and what happened, you did a very good job at sensing.
I tried.
Did a good job. A very good job. What about you, Micah? What do you think about like what you've seen maybe happen in some of the counties that you worked? Not even, it could be anything. It could just be like an issue that you think needs to be addressed. Like Williamsburg County had one hospital for the entire county. One place I canvassed with Tiana, they didn't have a grocery store anywhere in that town. There was like a Family Dollar. So, you know, things like that I don't ever really hear anyone talk about. But
well, that's like, if I'm not mistaken, that's like Abbeville. Abbeville, I think that whole county has one grocery store, and it's Ingles, if I'm not mistaken. And that's it. And you know what I mean? There's not a lot of options and stuff like that. Like, honest to God, I feel like that's kind of why, like, as a county, we're like so lower on every scale is because we're not investing in our community. This is why we need more Democrats in office. You know, honest to God, this is why we need more Democrats in office. If you, so.
Oh man.
So I guess.
I think also we need to empower better people to run for office.
I agree.
Like yourself.
No.
Yeah.
Run for office. I would be all about it.
Right. Deidre 2022.
No.
Yes,
Are we working on it?
No, my mouth is too free to be a politician.
But you know what, Deidre? Honestly, like, I think the reason why I didn't win was because I didn't have enough name recognition. But like when I talk to people, talking to them on that level, and then honestly talking like real to them seems to be really connecting. You know what I mean? Like they're tired of the bull BS, you know?
Right.
And they can smell it now. They can, you know, we've been through it so much now, we can see it. We can see it a mile away, we can feel it, you know? So I think people need that.
They do, not from me, but they do need it from someone. But I really feel like you should have won. I'm sorry, that's off topic, but go ahead.
No, me too. But I think I said I was gonna spend this time to build more name recognition in the community, and then try again a couple of years later.
Yeah.
But that's honestly why I ran. It's like I didn't plan on running at all, but I knew how to do the job. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like we know what needs to be done as organizers and as people in politics. And I was like, well, I'm gonna put my hat in the race, you know.
Yes.
I admire you for doing it. It's not easy, that's for sure.
It really wasn't. But I loved it, but it was not easy. Towards the end, I was just like, oh my goodness. But
right,
it was worth it.
So let me ask you just about like, so it's interesting because I think we typically think of when we think about reaching out to voters as like, you know, there might be certain issues that like different demographics of voters are interested. So maybe like rural communities versus urban communities. So is there a big contrast in terms of the types of topics that you see people interested in? Or at the end of the day, are they just interested in, are they going to vote for who they like more? Because Micah, you ended up talking about like how really it's just about connecting with people. And if you can do that, they'll vote for you. And like half the time they may not even be paying attention to your platform. Is that true?
I think so. So like for me, like when I was an organizer, or even like when I was campaigning, when I walk into somebody's yard, I kind of assess what they got going on. And I make my subject around that because that's what matters. If I see a whole bunch of toys in the yard, oh, you have kids, so I need to talk about this because this is going to concern you the most. Or you get what I'm saying? So yeah, I find that because honestly, I'm a stranger to you. You don't really care what I got to say unless it's something that's going to affect you, you know? So, and I try to reach that point. That's what just seemed to work for me.
And to be honest, between the communities, the core things that people are worried about, it's the same things. You may have a little bit of a change, you know, when you're talking about social justice, but healthcare and better wages, better schools, just a better quality of life. I mean, that's just across the board, no matter what the race is, and actually it crosses party lines. And I'm just going to stop there because I'm going to say something offensive, but yeah, it crosses party lines, the core things that people are concerned about.
I agree. I will go to, because I don't mind knocking the door. So I would go to a house that was a Republican, and I knew walking up it was a Republican house. You can kind of tell nowadays.
You can.
Yeah, but I still knocked it and I talked. And when you get down to that court, people want the same thing. You know what I mean? It might be something that differed as to why they went to one party over another, but they still kind of generally want the same thing.
Right. Right.
Just like security for their families,
Mm-hmm.
like good jobs, good paying job, like education for their kids. Like it is pretty basic. I mean, at least it seems to me. But I guess people have different responses to how they think they're going to get there.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
Trump definitely brought that out.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think Trump brought it out necessarily. I think it was always there. You did have people who were loud and proud with their ignorance and, you know, their racism. Trump definitely did make weaker people, you know, emboldened, but it was always there
Mhm.
in both parties. It was always there.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All he did was give an excuse for other people who wouldn't necessarily speak what they were thinking. Well, if the president
Right.
in this stuff, then I can speak my mind too.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. But what's interesting, so I don't know if either of you know, Julinna is a philosophy professor. So
Mm-hmm.
you talk about like people's political views and the best way to change them in any of your classes?
Yeah, it's real tricky. So I see that my teaching is a long-term strategy, right? So it's good that I have a whole semester because I don't think that one like conversation or 1 hour is necessarily gonna like change people's thinking about things.
Mhm.
But I do think that like engaging, like I think another important thing is just like having lots of different people in a room who they don't know, you know, racially diverse, gender diversity, age diversity, ethnic citizenship differences. And so then they get to hear different perspectives and they're forced to sit there, right? They can't like leave the class because like they don't like listening, you know, to some students talk, right? And so it forces you to build your empathy, and then it forces you to like critically engage. And you know, I tell my students all the time, like I change my mind all the time, you know, because I think about things. So you should never feel bad about that, and don't feel like you have to stick to your guns if you like, you know, after thinking about a topic that you're like, oh, actually I need to like, you know, think about things differently. um,
Mhm.
so I think that engaging in conversation works. I just think that it's a long-term strategy. And so when you engage with people, like talking to your family members and your friends is probably the most effective thing that you can do. And apparently this was one of the strategies that they did in Georgia. I can't remember, Ashlyn, if it was you that I was talking to, but their strategy in Georgia was to mobilize voters, and that you talk to all 50 people in your network. You go through your phone and you talk to your friends, your acquaintances, your family members, and that's how you organize, is by who you're already connected to. And I
Mhm.
honestly think that like in terms of a long-term strategy, right, that like your impact that you can have on people is for the people that you have a relationship with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they can trust you. And you know, that's a challenge with politics these days, is that, you know, there's not always a relationship between, you know, constituents and their, you know, elected officials, because they represent too many people. So
I think that was a
Mhm.
Project Turnout. I think does something similar to that, and they did it with the Andrew Yang campaign when he was running for president too. They would
mhm.
have people do that, and they say, I don't know if y'all remember this in training, but on the Bernie campaign, they told us that like your friend and friend is your most affected, followed
Mm-hmm.
by canvassing, knocking on doors, and then phone calling.
Yeah, I was gonna say that sounded a lot like the Burn app, which
Mm-hmm.
was
Well, yeah.
cool, but it didn't have a lot of, I guess, like, I don't know, like there was no good end point. Like I feel like the data just like went nowhere. But that is basically what the Burn app was. Like add your friends into the Burn app and how they feel on these issues and how they feel about the candidates. And then it kind of just stopped. So if Georgia
Mm-hmm.
like found a way to like continue that into like making some real like I don't know, some tangible results, then that's probably a good part of why they were able to do what they did.
Yeah.
But I think probably some of the issue here, at least with me, and Deidre and Micah, you can speak for yourselves, is that like all of the people I already know and talk to are the same.
Mm.
they have the same opinions almost on almost everything when it comes to voting.
Mine don't. Like, I constantly butt heads, but not in a negative way, with someone I'm extremely close to. She's probably watching now and she knows I'm talking about her. We have really long conversations about, why we feel so strongly about what we feel. And we do compromise sometimes, but on some things I'm just not willing to compromise. I feel like Bernie Sanders should be president. She
Oh, girl.
She doesn't agree, but like my network, everyone's not really always engaged, and I'm sometimes that annoying person that's like, well, did you see what happened here? Like, don't you know how we could have avoided that or whatever. So I mean, my network is a little bit more diverse, I guess.
Yeah.
But I know what you're talking about. And I feel for you.
What about you, Micah? What do you think that there's, without reaching out to like strangers or like maybe like coworkers at like a job or something, like the people in your close circle, would you be organizing them, or are they already on board with you?
Oh no, at work it's opposite. I feel like I'm pretty sure I'm the most progressive, but it's very Republican leaning where I work at now. So it's kind of interesting hearing those conversations, and then bringing a talking point that's a little bit more progressive, but kind of, I like to water it down a little bit to where I'm telling you something that's a little bit more progressive, but it's something that you can kind of grab onto. Like, you know what I'm saying? I wish I could give you like a good anecdote at this moment, but I can't think of one. But there was a time where someone was talking about the Georgia voting suppression, and they wasn't aware of like certain things about like IDs and stuff, and they thought everyone had ID. And I told them, I was like, well, no, not everyone has ID. Younger people, I meet younger people all the time who don't have ID. Who needs an ID, who can't register or whatever. So those are certain things that you have to look into. Or there was another thing I had to talk about, and it was just like breaking it down to where it was like tangible. You didn't feel like I'm being combative or arguing with you, if that makes sense, But yeah, my group is, I feel like sometimes I'm the most progressive out of my friends too. They're Democrats, but they're more conservative. My family's the same way. They're more of a conservative Democrat. So, but slowly they get there. I think when you don't come off combative, when you just come off as, this is my view, you can take it as is,
Yeah.
Eventually they come around. And once they see like, oh, this is what Micah was talking about. This is why, we need Medicare for all, or we need quality paying jobs, good paying jobs, a low living wage, So.
Right.
Which I also will argue, a lot of people have progressive views, and they really are progressives. They just don't want to call themselves that.
Right. Or they don't want to call themselves a Democrat.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious. You came here to Horry County, Deidre, and you canvassed with me and some other folks, but you mainly were in like the more rural area of the PD region. Did you see any difference? Like, I know Julinna kind of asked about it, but did you see any difference in like who you were talking to and what they cared about, or like different community issues when you were here in Myrtle Beach versus like when you're in Lake City or Florence, or even like Marion?
I'm gonna try to answer it in a censored way.
Apparently this seems to be an after hours live stream.
Some things I probably don't need to say on live stream, but so in Horry County, the people were more confident in their racism versus when I was like, and I struggle with R sounds. So the country part of Florence County, it was a little bit different. Like you can tell that they felt a certain kind of way because of my skin color, but they were more polite with it. In Horry County, for instance, one of our organizers who I love so much, it's not funny, but the person sicked their dogs on her because she had a Bernie shirt on, and they were just,
Goodness.
yeah, it was crazy. So Horry Counties, I don't know what it is. We're not far apart. I don't know why. Racism is just more pronounced there versus Florence County. But so I really didn't get to talk to many people in Horry County about their issues.
Okay, that makes sense. I forgot about that.
Yeah, when we went to Black neighborhoods, I had a good time and talked to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can't really tell you if there's
right, because there's like within we have the same we have the same congressman, right?
Yeah.
Or you in Clyburn's district?
No, I'm
Tom Rice.
Tom Rice, yeah.
And so the reason I asked that is just because it seems that the people at the beach like refuse to vote for anyone who's not from the beach, regardless. So if Tom Rice gets beat in his primary, it's going to be a Republican from Myrtle Beach, and then it'll still probably be whoever's running from Myrtle Beach to win the general. So I mean, I feel like I spent most of my time in Florence, like at the office. So I don't feel like I got like a good understanding of the folks that you guys were canvassing like so often versus here. But Horry County is very, very different regarding where you were. Like wherever you are, I feel like I've heard a million different things from people and seen like a million different things. But yeah, I remember that incident and those type of folk here for sure. That is how it is. That is how it is. So
yeah,
I don't know what it is. Ellen said because Horry is way more segregated still. Yeah, I agree. Definitely.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, Gregory said, hi, Micah, and Congressional District 3 is calling your name.
Shut up,
So we have some comments. Gregory said that
hey, Gregory
was priceless.
Do what now?
Deidre had a priceless expression apparently at some point.
Oh.
Oh, I wish I would have known what it was, but Mercurius said, say it louder for the people in the back, Deidre. And so there is HR 1 federally and then H 3822 in South Carolina to get automatic voter registration. Julinna, if you didn't know, we have, I guess, something in the State House.
Really?
Graham said that South Carolinians should be terrified of the idea of automatic voter registration.
Really?
Yeah, I read it. Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Why? What is so terrifying about that? If you get a social security number, you get automatically registered to vote. Sounds like
no. He shouldn't be that terrified though, since he has his AR whatever to protect him. AR-15.
So is the bill that's in the South Carolina State House then similar to the HR Bill 1, which is the voting bill in the House of Representatives, the federal level? Is it a similar bill, I wonder?
I don't know. We'll have to look that up.
Okay.
Maybe Mercurius will chime in, but I did not know that there was one in the State House either.
Oh,
so
I didn't know that. So
I feel like they've been wasting their time on anti-trans legislation and anti-abortion legislation and what have you.
Right.
Right.
So, yeah.
They are trying to go back. They are. Trying to go back.
Super regressive. Super, super regressive. What is a tip that you would give to like someone coming out of high school or even college and wanting to get involved in organizing, whether it's for a party or a candidate or just like community organizing, not within a certain system?
I personally, I tell people, I told high school students to get involved with your local chapter. And I know we hear that a lot, but
Mhm.
if you have an effective local chapter like Oconee County Democrats or Greenville Democrats in our area, those are super helpful. You know, like I started off as a volunteer and I learned how to do vote builder from that, how to phone bank, how to canvas, how to organize. You know, you learn a bit more when you get hired on. But honestly, it was that those experience. If you want to learn, if you want to see if this is something you want to do, or you want to get your feet wet in organizing, go to your local party.
How about you, Dee?
So my intro to organizing formally is a bit different.
Mhm.
I've always organized my own way.
Mhm.
I just didn't know I was organizing. My
Right.
tip is to start with your circle, like relational organizing.
Yeah.
Talk to your circle, because I guarantee you everybody does not feel the same way that you do, or people may not know about the political process, and that'll get your feet wet with organizing, like becoming part of an organization or a campaign.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's good. Um, and it's funny because you're always like, I wasn't even looking for a job and I got offered a political job. So you
Now
kind
I'm
of just
really curious, Deidre, how did you get into organizing? You said you were a non-traditional path. So what is
organizer.
It was just basically, and I'm not gonna go like so into it, right place, right time type deal. I never wanted to be like formally involved in the political process because my views are so different, and because, you know, I don't like to censor my speech. My appearance is not, you know, respectable, like what you would typically see in this world. I'm not in that circle. So I never really had an interest in being really a part of politics, not formally. I would always just do things on my own, you know, with my circle.
Mhm.
So yeah.
I feel you. I feel you. And I know, Micah, you've been like formally involved in different things for a while. What are you doing right now?
Oh, I was gonna say taking notes.
No, I love you.
I miss you, Micah. I miss being around you.
Currently, well, after this runoff with the candidates, I'm going to help with the Anderson Dems to increase voter turnout. That was something that I did with, you know, on my campaign, and that it was effective and they liked. Um, so we're working on ways to do that with the general to bring out more people. So that's something I'll be working on. And then honestly, um, I'm trying to slow down a little bit on doing like other organizational work because I want to start doing more activist. Like I always want to go out to the protests and stuff like that, but I'm like, I'm always in a Zoom or I'm always, you know what I mean? I'm always like I'm doing something behind the scenes, but I do want to start getting more active.
Yeah, I encourage you to do that. I really do. Let's give Micah a megaphone.
Right.
I want to see it. You're phenomenal. Oh, Julinna, do you have any like off the top of your head questions?
I just
You
had
think, like people could benefit from?
I just have one though I lost it. I think what I was thinking about was like I'm curious as so this is a terrible thing. So as a philosopher, we're very interested in like convincing people with reasons, right? And so one of the things that's challenging about voting and convincing people to vote is that their vote will matter. And is that something that you guys run up against? Like when you're trying to mobilize people to vote, is there just like, my vote, I'm one person, like you really don't need me to vote. I mean, I feel like with the last election, with like the numbers being so close within percentage points of, you know, having declaring a winner, you know, needing to wait several days. So I think people maybe got the sense maybe that their vote more matters more, but you still need tens of thousands of people to believe that in order for voting to work and for it to be effective. So how do you convince people that their vote matters?
I broke it down to someone that I go get services from for a local election. I didn't talk about the national one because again, you know, you see more things with local, like you see more changes in how it affects you with local elections, you know, than you do with national. And I broke it down to how it would affect her pockets if a certain politician were elected. Right. So I mean, I break it down to people to how it directly affects them. And I give examples of how you can see the change locally. I don't even bother with nationally. And then like the advantage that we have, we're in small counties and towns. So I mean, you don't really have to have like tens of thousands of people convince them. But when you convince that one person, it goes back to relational organizing, then they go back and talk to people in their circles, and then those circles go back and talk to other people, you know? So I mean, it really does. It may not look like it's a big change, but you are, you know, making something happen.
So it's about trying to like get that motivation going and then spreading the enthusiasm, I guess.
Right. And money is a huge motivator for a lot of people.
Yeah. Good. What about you, Micah?
I was gonna say I agree with Deidre. That's what I do. But for me, what has me worried is it feels like, I don't know if y'all run across this, I felt this way, but it feels like more and more people, especially more disenfranchised people, seem to lean more of a conspiracy, like, oh, it's rigged, or my vote doesn't, like doesn't matter. It's all these, reasons and excuses, and I guess because they don't see change. But then that goes back to what we talked about earlier about not really being knowledgeable and knowing that, like, yes, you vote in your presidential every year, but what matters is when you vote for your city council, for your mayor, for your county council, or making sure that you're holding them accountable. I told someone else that too, because that's where your roads come from. That's where you get your whatever's going on in your neighborhood, you get that fixed, so your trash, whatever the case might be. Those are where your changes are really going to come from, It's not going to always come in your presidential election, so those are reasons why you should vote, make your voice heard. And I tell people this, like, you're not hurting your local Jim Bill county council for not voting for him if he's already in office. That's one less person he has to care about. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
But by you voting and letting your voice heard and let you say, like, I'm tired of you doing this, or I'm tired of you not doing this, so I'm going to vote for this person. You get what I'm saying? Or I'm going to hold you accountable because you work for me. Those are things we need to learn and learn the power we hold in our vote. And I just wish we could get that out to people that it matters the most to. The people that really needs the notice and needs the help.
Yeah. I think it's easier definitely to make people believe that their local elections matter more as their vote, specifically like that individual vote. But you're right, people, they vote less in those. The one thing that I always tried to reference, but it was a special election, so like these numbers aren't going to replicate, was when Connor Lamb ran in Pennsylvania. He's my hometown representative from where I'm from. He won by only like 800 votes. And the guy that he was running against was this awful Republican who was actually from my same little town. And I like just knew he had to lose. But it was just 800 votes. So those 800 votes clearly made the difference. Now, when you look at like Tom Rice and him winning against Melissa or against Robert Williams or against Mel Hyman, like he wins by tens of thousands of votes. So it's a little bit different. It's definitely hard to make that same case. And I know Julinna, you mentioned logic. Well, it's something with campaigns that like we are always taught to appeal to emotion and people make emotional votes, not logical votes. Absolutely. So I think if people did make logical votes, then maybe we would all be in a better situation.
I agree. They perhaps would be differently, like, but
we didn't practice our story of self for hours for people to make logical votes.
Right. Well, they say like as humans, we make our decisions, I think, emotionally first. How that affects us emotionally. Then later we kind of think about it in a logical sense. But yeah, I guess that's why like our my story, our why story is always important. But yeah, I do wish we was more logical than emotional.
Yeah.
And here we go. Mercurius said that the previous Florence mayor won by 1 vote.
Oh, you're
wow.
Yeah.
So I think that, I guess there's like a couple of different arguments, right? So there's the argument that your vote matters, like it's literally going to count, like you have these slim margins of error, especially for, local elections. And then you have the argument that's like the personal argument, which is like, I need to vote because I need to do what's in my own best interest, right? And then I need to vote to like hold people accountable, right? As a part of like, the part of what it means to be a representative is to represent the people. So you need to hold people accountable. Another weird argument that I think people give for voting, and I think this is again up at like for like wealthy people who really don't give a crap, but is that like it's a duty, right? It's an obligation, like part of like what you do as a citizen. And it doesn't really matter what the outcome is, but like it's just, that's what we do. It's part of our duty as living in a democracy. So that's almost more of like the like symbolic vote, right? That you're just willing to like vote for like the purpose of like looking good and participating. But that one doesn't even really have to do with like the impact of it. And it seems like, right, especially they just don't care. So, and I think like, and again with all these like statistics, it's so weird how like more educated people will vote, and they probably think nothing of it. And it's because it's not that it doesn't matter to them, but like they don't have to work hard to get time out of their day. They're not working, they're not starving, they're not like trying to get their car fixed, right, so that it runs properly. Right, they're not busy. They've been paying attention to the news, so they're not busy trying to figure out who's running for what. I've literally showed up to the ballot box and like looked, and I'm like, I literally have no idea who any of these people are, right? So then I'm like Googling, right, at the ballot, right, which is a terrible place to be, but like it's hard as a voter to stay informed, and for people that are working 40, 60, 80 hours a week and scraping by and trying to feed their kids, and like that's an extra hour out of your day where you have to like put forth the mental energy to think about it. And again, it's almost like the system was set up to do that.
Well, it's not almost. The system was set up to do that. They don't want people. I say it all the time. Ashlyn and I talk about it all the time. If people from lower income, or I'm not even going to use the other phrases, but if I call everybody the working poor, because we are the working poor. If we actually united, we could do so many things, but we have all of these barriers set up so we don't unite.
Yep.
So the system is set up for you to not vote. It's set up for you to not. I always tell people who ask me questions, don't feel bad if you don't know, certain things. Hell, I don't know a lot of things. But it's set up for you to not know.
Yeah.
It's convoluted. We're not adequately taught, the political process and what local government does. It's set up that way.
Yeah. Hard to participate in, convoluted legal processes, like getting bills passed and everything. I mean, it's complicated. Right.
Yeah.
Even down to the obvious thing like gerrymandering on both sides. It's rigged. And let me not go completely into the conspiracy theory, whatever, but yeah, it's rigged.
Yeah.
And they don't hide it. Look at Georgia.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They're like, whoops, all that voting really messed up our system.
Right.
So now we need to restrict.
Right. Oh yeah. Right. Oh man. Yeah. I was thinking
so all this just means is that we have to keep working harder to, encourage people to vote, to support bills that make voting easier, that make it more possible to educate voters, that don't have obscure language and like the things that you have to vote for. When I first moved here, one of the first things I voted on in 2006 was changing the age of consent in South Carolina. And it was so confusing. I'm like,
from what to what?
Right.
No.
16, 14 to 16. So, but it's like, if you're under 18, you got to be 16. Or maybe it was 12 to 14. Like it was something like.
No, I think it's 16, right? 16 is now legal, right?
I think it's 16.
But in 2006, it was something real low, right? And I was just like, what are we changing this to? Like, I was just flabbergasted. I had just moved here. I was like, what? And where did I move? Like, what is this antiquated state? So,
you're from where? You're from Georgia, right?
You're from Georgia. Yes, I had been living
in Louisiana, so don't act like.
Oh wait, no, you can't throw shade.
Yeah, I know. That's true. But I had also lived in Boston. So there is some progressive all the progressives are up in Massachusetts. But and New Orleans progressive, but the whole state of Louisiana is definitely not. So yeah.
New Orleans is its own little thing.
It is its own little island. But no, I mean, like making the wording of the bills reflect the actual content, right, of what they say.
Yeah, those questions that you vote on at the end, they definitely purposely make them confusing. So where you think you're voting for what you want, you're actually voting against what you want.
Yeah,
I had to prepare. I guess it was 2018 maybe, or maybe it was 2020. I don't know. I had to prepare and I had to read it, and then I had to Google, and I had to talk to other people who knew what that specific edition was, and ask okay, if I want this to happen, do I vote yes or no? Like, what is it? So
we just had the same thing in Florence County. I think it was for the penny tax, but the explanation was like 10 pages. And it was crazy.
Yeah, that is unnecessary. So anyway, we have to just keep working for more transparency, I think, in voting and mobilizing people and getting people motivated, and then getting, fixing the gerrymandering issue and the voter suppression issue. Because I think another reason people aren't motivated to vote in South Carolina is because half the time there's only one person to vote for on half those offices. Yeah. So then you're like, why am I bothering to vote? There's it doesn't matter. There's already one person who's going to win. There's only one person winning.
That also goes back to empowering people to run for office.
Yep.
And getting behind them to run for office. There are so many good leaders out here who just feel like, I'm never going to win.
Right. And we need to make it so that they have the resources and the help and the support without them spending like a small fortune up front to do so. Like, we should be able to train them and help them get things set up and going without them investing, upwards of $1,000 to do it, because that's going to hold people back. I mean, look at the salaries. Pretty much only lawyers, wealthy people, or real estate agents can go be in the state house as it is. So yeah, that's part of the problem. I feel you on that, Deidre. Definitely do. I do. And I guess just to wrap it up, for people who aren't involved in any sort of organizing other than, the Democratic Party that Micah has referenced a few times, if there's not something that you're interested in, just start it.
Or Google it.
Mhm.
There's so many different things coming up, like the Sunrise in Upstate.
Yeah, that
there's
just started.
Yeah.
Right. So that's awesome.
Yeah. There's like environmental groups. You know what I mean? Like there's so much.
Yeah.
And then like you said, you started.
If it
Find a
doesn't
mentor.
start it. Right. Absolutely.
We didn't exist 4 years ago, and look, here we are.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Sometimes the world is waiting on you. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes it's like you get frustrated because why is this not happening? Da, 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 da. It's because you didn't get up and do it. Sometimes we're waiting on you to do it.
Yes.
I like that saying. The world's waiting on you to do it.
Yeah. Okay, that's your next campaign slogan.
Right.
I'm down in your notes right now. That was fun. That was so good.
Love it. I love it.
Oh my goodness. All right. Oh, okay. I guess Gregory thinks that you should run for office, Deidre. Marcurius said thank you for the discussion. He also said, Julinna, it was 12 to 16. So it was 12.
16.
Wow.
I am so upset the age of consent was 12.
Yes, me too. I was like, what's going on? Why was it ever 12?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So there we go. We're back. We're up to 16 now.
Yeah.
Still married cousin. So we're still good.
But what pedophile thought that 12 was okay?
I don't know, but we need to call Olivia Benson apparently to get down here and deal with South Carolina.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
I'm telling you.
Thank you both so much for joining us. I wish we could be in person. I do.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. It was great to see you guys. This has been wonderful. So thank y'all so much for joining us. This has been an awesome discussion. We appreciate your taking your time out of your day to talk about how we can mobilize people for the future elections and voter participation. So we've gotten some great ideas tonight. So we'd like to thank Deidre and Micah for joining us. This has been awesome. And of course, with Ashlyn, my amazing sidekick, to carry the night tonight. So thank you guys all for joining in and tuning in, and we'll just go ahead and sign off. And it was great. And y'all enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. All right.
Thank you for inviting us too.
Thank you.
It was a nice discussion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's been great. All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.